Hi, my name's Peter Brereton, and in 2015 I did a small action research project using wikis and using screencasts in order to improve the way that I give writing feedback to my students. This short video is going to explain a little bit about what I did and how you can do the same. So my aims for my action research project were basically to give students more meaningful feedback. Instead of writing comments, I wanted to try giving them voice comments instead. I also intended to have the students work together more, and also to become more involved in the feedback process. Now, before we go any further, just two words that I need to check with you. The first one is a screencast, which is a video recording of your computer screen, often with audio voiceover, much like this video, and a wiki, which is a website similar to Wikipedia where everybody can add and edit content, and they're used in a range of educational context as well as Wikipedia. I'm going to show you my wiki now and explain why I decided to use one. Now, the main thing was, as I mentioned, that I wanted the students to be involved in the feedback process more. And I felt that I was at the center of the traditional feedback process. Students handed me their writing, I handed it back to each other, back to them, but they didn't get to see each other's work. And there was very little in the way of peer feedback or interaction. Also, because the students are making similar mistakes, I felt like I was repeating my feedback again and again. What I wanted was something that could unify them. So instead of one student receiving one piece of homework, they could receive the whole class's homework to be able to look at the feedback and learn from it. So I decided to use a wiki because, like I said, all the students can see all the homework. There's no hidden aspect to the homework here. Everything was very transparent. Now, a wiki is also a private platform, but it's accessible for the students. All you need is a username and password. And it's very user-friendly, and it's easy to create new pages. I also like that the students could leave comments on each other's pages, which meant that I could see how much they were interacting with each other. And it also meant that they were giving feedback to each other quite easily. And as I said here, it's also a very useful tool for tracking how often the students are logging on. Now, some of the advantages and disadvantages of wikis include, like I said before, that they get the whole class of feedback, and the students can interact more, or it enables them to interact more, and to learn from each other in terms of vocabulary, in terms of expressions that they use, in terms of organization and answering the question. These were all areas that I noticed students were borrowing from each other. I also liked that I was able to use a long-term database of work, so I could refer back to students' previous work that they'd done 2 or 3 or 5 or even 7 or 8 weeks earlier. On the downside, I was aware that students might be reluctant to share their work with each other, because writing I think is traditionally seen as a private action that people do. It also requires a certain amount of technology, a minimal training really, because they're so user-friendly, but also a little bit of setting up before the course begins and regular management of the wiki, just to make sure that students are commenting, that they're uploading their work, and that they're being appropriate at all times and professional. The main downside was the demands on my own time that the wiki made, and that students also had to have more time in terms of logging on, in terms of uploading work and commenting on each other's. I think it's time well spent, though. Now, a couple of student testimonies. This student was the only student who used a pseudonym when offered, but she said that she hesitated at first, but she got used to posting after that, and she thinks it's fair because everybody shares with everybody else. This student said he was motivated by the wiki, and that it helped get to know each other, which was an interesting benefit, because it wasn't something I intended, but the students did get to know each other very quickly, and they could relate to each other and to each other's writing, and putting names to faces was quite easy. He also mentioned that he was pressurized, I suppose. There was a good kind of peer pressure there, that they had to write their homework because everybody else had done it. Now let me just show you my wiki very quickly. It looked like this. This is the welcome page with some basic instructions about what to do. And if you want to pause the video now, I'm sure you'll be able to read this in more detail. And then in here, we've got each week, and each week the students just drop their work into the folder, which I then checked. There's a copy of the task that they had to do, and also some sample answers and some feedback from me for the general class. But when students did do their work, you could see that underneath the students were commenting on each other's. I'm not going to open any because of privacy issues. Now moving on to the Screencast software. Now I use Jing, which is characterized by this sun in the corner of the screen. But Snagit and Screencastify, which is actually what I'm using right now, which is a Chrome extension, also work well, I think. Now with Jing, you have a maximum of 5 minutes. Screencastify gives you 10. And it basically allows you to talk through your feedback on your students' work in any way that you wish. I used different varieties. Sometimes I read the work aloud. Sometimes I just commented on it after I'd provided written feedback on Microsoft Word. I then saved it and posted a link to the screencast below the student's work, so that student and anybody else was able to click on the link and to listen to my feedback. I encourage the students to watch each other's videos at least, and comment, and watch at least 2 others, and leave comments when they did, so that I could get a rough idea of how many students were doing this. Now the advantages and disadvantages of this was, I found it was much more engaging for the students. They listened to the feedback. They didn't just give it a cursory glance and then put it in their bag. They had to really they had to really listen to the feedback. And I think that I was able to give clearer feedback. There was no correction codes, and I was able to highlight quite clearly with my mouse what the students were doing well and what they needed to do better. There was also a bigger focus on global issues with screencasts, and more, and not so much on the kind of minor errors that students were making. And it gave them listening practice as well. However, it does require a little bit of buy-in from the students. Motivation, with classes with low motivation, it might be an issue. And again, it requires a little bit of technology and a little bit of training, although the students are not required to download anything, really. Again, teacher time and student time is an issue, and the students do need good listening skills to be able to understand the video in the first place. The other thing that the students came up with in feedback on the project was that there was no handwriting practice, which they need in order to do the IELTS exam. Now, a few testimonies from students that I'm going to run through quite quickly. This one said that she found it easier to understand. Student K said something very similar. Student Y was disappointed occasionally that I hadn't checked it more regularly. I tended to check the website twice a week and only make corrections when everybody, or when the vast majority of students had uploaded their work. And this one said that the 5-minute videos were a little short, and she also kept a vocabulary diary that showed that she learned from everybody else. Now that's basically it about my project, and I know that my video here is running out of time as well. If anybody has any questions about anything at all, please get in touch with me at this email address, or you can check out my website here, which is very new. But thanks very much for listening.